Welcome back. Now we answer questions we receive from you, our viewers. If you have a question, visit our website, QuranSpeaks.com. Dr. Shabir, we have a question from someone who says she's not a Muslim. She says, I'm not a Muslim, but have spent lots of time in lockdown in the UK discussing theology with a friend. We've been watching your videos on abrogation. They're fascinating and very informative. I'm interested in learning more about Mutawatir Hadith and keen to view a copy of all Hadith that are classed as such in English. So she describes some of the things that she's found, but she's not 100% sure. And she says, I just wanted a reliable source where I can read them in English. I was hoping you could help.
Yeah, so in English, there is a document that somebody has compiled based on the work of a Saudi scholar, and that original work is on a site. If you just type in your search engine, how many Mutawatir Hadiths are there, you will find this document coming up. And actually, it's the document is available for a free download.
Okay.
A compilation of 322 such hadiths which are said to be mutawatir, with some explanation and commentary on each. So I suppose for a non-Muslim approaching this, it'll be easier to understand. But now that original work of the compilation of the 322 hadiths by themselves, that's a large number of mutawatir hadith, given our history of discussions about, what exactly is a mutawatir hadith and how do you recognize one, and which is a mutawatir and which is not. So maybe I should start by explaining for those who are not so savvy as our questioner as
what
to
is
what is a
mutawatir?
mutawatir. Yes. So a mutawatir in Arabic means something like, something that is continuous, but it has the more of a sense here of something that is repeated through multiple lines of transmission. So if you think of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, saying something, his followers running away with that statement and teaching it to their followers, the next generation, and then to the next generation, and so on. If the shampoo commercial that says if two persons told two persons and each told two persons.
I don't know this commercial.
This is an old one, So so in any case, it multiplies, right? So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, having many followers, if he said something important, you would expect that many of his followers will report that to the next generation, and then to the next generation, and so on, and it will become a multiply attested hadith. It'll be mutawatir. One would approach it and have such a confidence that nobody has invented this or changed it from what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said. Unfortunately, what we have in the world of hadith narratives is that most of what we come across, even the ones which are called sahih, which means simply authentic, are not mutawatir. They're more of the category that hadith scholars describe with the word ahad, which means singly attested narratives, even though they might be related by two or three persons. But they didn't reach that level that Muslim scholars could have such absolute confidence in them. So they call them ahad, as in contradistinction to mutawatir. Now, so what exactly is a mutawatir? It must, like, how many people do you need to have transmitting this?
Yeah.
And nobody has come up with a precise number. But the one thing that people agree on is that it must be such a large number of persons so that you can have confidence that nobody made a mistake in this, because so many people are narrating the same thing. Now, it so happens that among these 322 hadiths that are deemed to be mutawatir by this scholar, first of all, there are repetitions. I can see at a glance that what he's listed as numbers 3, 4, and 5 is basically the same narrative, but with variations. And so the number is actually much smaller when we take out these variations. And the variations themselves point to a problem in that even those which are said to be mutawatir, they're not mutawatir in wording. It's not that everybody related the same words. The same basic idea may be there most of the time, but the ones which are narrated by wording, these are very few and far in between. Even one which is most celebrated is a hadith that says that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar." Whoever invents a saying attributing it to me, let him take his seat in the fire. But apparently the same thing is narrated differently. Man qala alayya ma lam aqul falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar. Whoever says that I said something that I didn't say, may as well take his seat in the fire. So we can see some similarity there. It's obviously the same saying, but it has been somehow turned around with different wordings. So what we can say most often is that the hadiths which are said to be mutawatir are probably more so in terms of the basic idea, not so much in the exact words.
So, Dr. Shabir, how trustworthy are these mutawatir hadith?
Well, it depends on one's definition of what is mutawatir. So if we take mutawatir to mean that kind of hadith which we have confidence in, then by definition, naturally, we have confidence in them. But then which will be the mutawatir hadith? One scholar will produce a list of mutawatir hadith. Another scholar will say that, no, there's some items in that list that I don't agree with. So that means one scholar says that a certain hadith is by mutawatir transmission, and hence reliable. Another scholar says, no, it is not reliable, and hence it is not by mutawatir transmission.
So there's no agreed upon criteria?
Criteria, yes. The only criteria is that it must be something that we find dependable, that we don't think that people colluded on or that they made a mistake in narrating. But if one looks at the content, one might find that what is related through multiple lines maybe is in contradiction with something that is related by other lines, which are also said to be mutawatir. And more so, it may be in contradiction with what is mentioned in the Quran. An example of this is what I refer to as numbers 3, 4, and 5 in the collection that I just spoke about. So basically, these hadiths say that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I've been commanded to fight against people until they say that there is no God but God, until they testify that there is no God but God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, and they establish the prayer and give charity. Whereas in the Quran, we have that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is told to desist and stop fighting people once they say that there is no God but God and that Muhammad they testify basically to the Islamic precepts. That means there are two different perspectives here. The Quran talking about the cessation of battle once people embrace Islam, and the hadith saying that the battle must continue until people embrace Islam. So there's a subtle difference and logical distance between the two, because the Quran is not saying that you must fight people, whereas the hadith is saying you must fight people. So there's a vast difference between the two perspectives here. And the Quran, on the other hand, as we know, enjoins upon us to ensure the freedom of religion. People are free; they cannot be compelled. Surah 2, verse 256. Surah 2 again, verse 190, saying we are only to fight against people who are fighting against us. So if non-Muslims, they have not testified that they believe in one God or that they believe in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But if they're not fighting us, we're not allowed to fight them. Whereas the hadith is saying the Prophet, peace be upon him, has been commanded to fight them until and unless they say that there is no God but God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. So we can see that though this hadith has been classified as a mutawatir by the scholar that I mentioned, on the other hand, looking at the Quran, we have little reason to trust that narrative. Somebody has made a mistake and turned the narrative in a different direction from you cannot fight them once they say that. Because let's say you're fighting against another people and they suddenly testify, wait a minute, we accept that there's no God but God and Muhammad is the prophet of God. Then, according to the Quran, your battle must cease. And we have examples of this showing that the Prophet, peace be upon him, ceased his fighting, or he condemned a companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who continued to attack a person who had actually testified. The excuse of the companion is that I thought he was being hypocritical. He was just saying that to save his skin because he saw I had the upper hand over him. And it's a report saying that the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked him, well, did you cut open his heart to see what is inside? Like, how do you know what's in the person's mind? So the lesson from that is that once the person has proclaimed the Islamic declaration of faith, you cannot continue to fight against him. But that doesn't mean that you have to fight against him if he did not first testify. So there's a difference between the two things. And when we read the Quran, we have to evaluate the hadiths relation to the Quran. And in that case, if the hadith is contrary to what is in the Quran, we cannot say that this is a mutawatir hadith in the sense that this is like absolutely trustworthy. There could be some mistake in what is narrated.
So it seems, Dr. Shabir, that there's no clear collection of mutawatir hadith that we can point this questioner to, and I guess any Muslim. We can't say that this is a collection of mutawatir hadith that are reliable, that you can trust and you can live your life by.
Yeah, and that is not only in the English translations, like we're looking at from the English point of view, but even in the Arabic tradition. Al-Imam al-Suyuti from the Middle Ages, he died in the year 911 of the Hijrah, 1505 of our Common Era, so several hundred years ago. He compiled a book of 100 such hadiths, and then he produced even a shorter work based on that. And some other scholars too have produced here and there, but not many such works have been produced in our history.
Why do you think so?
And probably because once you prepare a book of mutawatir hadith and you publicize this, then it detracts from the other collections which are not known to be mutawatir and on which the whole Islamic interpretation is based. Books such as Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Majah, and Nasa'i. Muslims rely on these texts and they're drawn to these texts. So let's say in the mind of the average Muslim, Bukhari is the most authentic, which is true. Compared with the others, Bukhari is the most authentic. But then, if you say that there is another book, there is a book of mutawatir hadiths that's more authentic than the hadiths in Bukhari, because if this is mutawatir and Bukhari is not, then it's clear that this is more authentic. So it becomes almost of an embarrassment to have the mutawatir hadiths to be so small in number. Like you have a small book of mutawatir hadith. And if people are directed to the book of Mutawatir Hadith, they're going to start questioning the others. So perhaps for this reason, the Muslim populace has not been so interested in the Mutawatir Hadith until now. As Muslims are looking closer at the Hadith, Muslims are becoming more literate. They're internet savvy and they're searching things, and they're coming to understand that. And we're debating with people of other faiths, and we're asking them, okay, if you say that Jesus, on whom be peace, claimed to be God, where did he say that? Okay, so you produce a certain gospel, and we ask him, okay, why is it in this gospel but not in the other one? And how do you know he actually said this? Is this multiply attested? And in fact, Christian scholars are using multiple attestation as one of the criteria for determining what Jesus actually said.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. So now Muslims are becoming savvy to this as well. And we're thinking, okay, so if we're demanding of our Christian friends to produce the sayings of Jesus in a mutawatir attested form, then what about the sayings of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? How is it that we're accepting the sayings based on what single lines of transmission have given us? We should have the mutawatir as well. And hence the search for the mutawatir traditions. And it turns out that the narratives which from the Prophet, peace be upon him, are narrated through multiple lines, all agreeing with each other in exact wording, these are very few, very extremely few. And that's why, again, nobody is producing the list, but everybody is saying they're extremely few. They're rare.
But if we don't have this confidence in Mutawatir Hadith, then what do we have?
Okay, but then let me go to the other side of that and answer by saying that we do have a lot of information which can be said to be multiply attested, not in the exact wording, but in the concept or the idea.
Okay.
So let's say Muslims are widely performing 2 rakats or 2 cycles of prayer for the morning prayer, 4 for the afternoon, 4 for the late afternoon, 3 at the sunset time, and 4 again later at night. So these number of cycles of prayer, these are widely attested. But they're not attested in the exact words. It's just that we can see the same concept of this many cycles of prayer in so many different reports from so many different parts of the Muslim world from early times that we have no doubt that this is the number of cycles that were prayed by the earliest Muslims and hence by the Prophet, peace be upon him, as well. So we do have a lot of good information like this. But when it comes to many of the instructions that are reported from the Prophet, peace be upon him, most of these are not multiply attested in wording, as they are found in the widely circulated collections today, like Bukhari and Muslim, and so on.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.